At my son Julian's funeral, a day meant for solemn goodbyes, I witnessed three young girls lay flowers on his grave, whispering, "Bye, Daddy." My only child gone, and I never knew he had children. I just stood there, the world tilting. Little did they know that quiet moment was the start of everything unraveling. Like this story, share it, and tell me where you're listening from. The world, as Evelyn knew it, shattered with the cold, impersonal ring of the telephone. It was Tuesday morning, just past 11. She remembered looking at the sunbeam stretching across her antique mahogany dining table, thinking it promised a beautiful day. Then, the voice on the other end, formal and measured, delivered the news that would forever cleave her life into a before and an after. Her son, Julian Hayes, her only child, 43 years old, a respected physician, was dead. A car accident. The words felt like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. She pictured him that very morning, standing in the same kitchen, patiently waiting as she prepared his usual scrambled eggs and toast. He always had a busy schedule, but he'd always made time for breakfast with his mother. They had talked about his upcoming patient, a tricky diagnosis, and her plans for the day. He'd kissed her on the cheek, that familiar scent of his aftershave lingering, and promised to call her later. Those mundane, cherished moments now felt like cruel taunts, ghosts in the sunlit room. Later that afternoon, a uniformed Officer Davies stood in her elegant entryway, his face a portrait of solemn sympathy. He spoke in hushed tones, using medical terms that blurred into an incomprehensible drone. Cardiac arrest at the scene, massive trauma. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Mrs. Hayes." The words were meant to console, but they only served to hollow out the vast, echoing silence Julian had left behind. Her beautiful, well-ordered house, once filled with the faint hum of his life, his occasional laughter, or the rustle of his medical journals, was now utterly empty. Julian, her brilliant, kind Julian, was gone. Evelyn Hayes was a woman of substantial means. Her late husband, Arthur, a shrewd investor, had left her with millions in the bank, enough to live in comfort for several lifetimes. She had never wanted for anything material. Yet, as she sat in the oppressive quiet of her drawing room, surrounded by objets d'art and family heirlooms, the money felt utterly meaningless. It couldn't buy back a single breath of her son's life, couldn't fill the void in her heart. What good was wealth when the only person she truly cared to share it with was gone? The days leading up to the funeral were a hazy, painful blur. Kindly relatives, friends, and Julian's professional colleagues drifted in and out, their faces etched with sympathy. She remembered Der Sanchez, Julian's partner at the clinic, holding her hand, his eyes red-rimmed. "Julian was dedicated, Evelyn," he'd said, his voice thick with emotion. "He saved so many lives. A true healer." Others echoed his sentiments, speaking of Julian's compassion, his unwavering commitment to his patients. Evelyn nodded numbly, absorbing their words, but a gnawing guilt began to fester within her. Had Julian worked too much? Was it out of dedication? Or was it a desperate attempt to fill a loneliness she hadn't recognized? Had she, in her comfortable widowhood, somehow failed him? The thought was a bitter poison, twisting in her gut. The service was held at St. Mary's, the same venerable church where Julian had been baptized as an infant. It was crowded, a testament to the myriad lives he had touched. Father Thomas, his voice a soothing balm, spoke eloquently of Julian's life, his unwavering faith, and his quiet benevolence. Evelyn sat in the front pew, her hand clutching a handkerchief, her gaze fixed on the mahogany casket, feeling a profound disconnection from her own body. It was as if she were an observer at someone else's tragedy. Then came the procession to Greenwood Cemetery. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and dying leaves. Evelyn watched, her heart a leaden weight in her chest, as Julian's casket was slowly, irrevocably lowered into the dark, welcoming earth. The sound of the rope straining, then the soft thud as it settled into its final resting place, echoed the irreparable break that had occurred deep within her soul. This was it, the final goodbye. As the last condolences were murmured and the crowd began to disperse, Evelyn remained, a solitary figure amidst the fresh flowers and upturned soil. Her eyes, unfocused with grief, suddenly caught on three small figures near a sprawling oak tree at the edge of the cemetery grounds. They were girls, identical, perhaps 10 or 11 years old, dressed in formal black dresses that seemed a size too big for their slender frames. Their hair, a rich chestnut color, was braided neatly, and they held hands, their heads bowed. With a shared, almost synchronized movement, they began to walk toward Julian's fresh grave. There was a solemnity in their gait, a quiet purpose that drew Evelyn's attention. Each girl carried a single, pristine white daisy. They reached the gravesite, hesitated for a moment, then, one by one, gently placed their flowers amongst the elaborate sprays and wreath. Their small shoulders shook slightly, and their genuine grief was palpable, radiating from their slight forms. Then one of them, the tallest, leaned down, her lips barely touching the gravestone. Evelyn strained to hear. The whisper, carried on the breeze, was faint but unmistakable. "Bye, Daddy." The words struck Evelyn with the force of a physical blow, stealing her breath. Daddy? Julian had no children, he had no wife. Her mind reeled, trying to make sense of the impossible. Just as the thought solidified, the girls looked up. Their eyes, wide and identical, met hers. Surprise, then a flicker of fear, crossed their young faces. Without a word, they turned, still holding hands, and ran, disappearing quickly behind the sheltering embrace of the oak tree and vanishing from sight. Evelyn blinked, her heart hammering. Had she imagined it? Was her mind, fractured by grief, playing cruel tricks? Mrs. Lee, her longtime housekeeper and companion, approached her, her arms slipping around Evelyn's waist. "Are you ready to go home, Mrs. Hayes?" she asked softly. Evelyn recounted what she had seen, her voice trembling with disbelief. Mrs. Lee gently squeezed her. "Oh, dear Evelyn, grief plays such tricks on the mind. Those poor little things were probably visiting someone else. It's time to rest." But Evelyn knew. She hadn't imagined it. The whispered words still echoed in her ears. That night, sleep offered no escape for Evelyn. Her spacious bedroom, usually a sanctuary of peaceful slumber, became a prison of churning thoughts. The image of the three little girls, their identical faces etched with sorrow, replayed relentlessly in her mind. But it was the whispered words that truly haunted her. "Bye, Daddy." They echoed in the silence, piercing the wall of denial she tried to build. Mrs. Lee's kind dismissal of her vision as a trick of grief had offered temporary comfort, but deep down, Evelyn knew. It felt too real, too raw, too profoundly impactful to be a mere figment of her shattered mind. She tossed and turned, replaying every interaction with Julian, every casual conversation. Not once had he ever mentioned children or a wife. Julian had always been so private, so focused on his medical career, but to keep such a monumental secret? It seemed impossible. Yet the memory of their solemn faces, the genuine sorrow in their eyes, gnawed at her. She finally resolved that she had to go back. Grief might play tricks, but curiosity and a strange nascent hope compelled her. She needed answers, even if they were painful ones. For the next week, Evelyn found herself drawn to Greenwood Cemetery daily. Each morning she would instruct her driver, Mr. Henderson, to take her there, often much to Mrs. Lee's quiet concern. She'd bring Julian's favorite flowers, vibrant yellow tulips, carefully arranging them on his grave. But her true purpose was not just to mourn, it was to search. She would sit on a nearby bench or stroll discreetly through the rows of headstones, her eyes constantly scanning for the small figures, the flash of dark hair. Each day ended in disappointment, and with each passing afternoon, the conviction that she had imagined the girls began to solidify. Perhaps Mrs. Lee was right after all. Perhaps the intensity of her sorrow had conjured an impossible scenario. Then, on the following Wednesday, exactly 1 week after Julian's funeral, as Evelyn was about to leave, she saw them. 3 small figures, unmistakable even from a distance, approaching Julian's grave. This time they were dressed in dark blue school uniforms, complete with white shirt and neat ties. Each carried a single vivid red carnation. A jolt went through Evelyn, sharp and undeniable. This was no trick of the mind. They were real. She watched, concealed partially by a weeping willow, as the triplets walked with the same quiet reverence as before. They were identical, no doubt about it, with the same rich, dark chestnut hair, styled in simple braids and matching solemn expressions. They looked to be around 10 years old. They reached the grave, their small hands placing the red carnations gently on the fresh earth. The girl in the middle, the same one who had spoken before, leaned forward. "We miss you, Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible, tinged with a child's raw sadness. Aunt Eleanor says, "You're in heaven now. We hope you can see us." Evelyn's breath hitched. This was undeniable. This was real. A faint sound escaped her lips, a small gasp of disbelief and recognition. The girls immediately looked up, their heads snapping towards the sound. Their identical dark eyes met hers, wide with surprise. The same girl, the one who seemed to be their spokesperson, took a hesitant step forward, her gaze unwavering. Are you Daddy's mommy?" she asked, her voice a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. Evelyn could only nod, completely speechless. Her heart thudded against her ribs, a chaotic symphony of emotions. Joy, shock, confusion, a burgeoning anger she couldn't yet define. The girl took another step, a brave little soldier. "I'm Grace," she announced, her voice clearer now, though still soft. She gestured to the girls beside her. "These are my sisters, Rose and Lily. We, we were Daddy's daughters." Evelyn felt a tremor run through her. Julian's daughters. The words were impossible, yet standing before her were three living proofs. She looked from one face to the next, searching, dissecting, and then she saw it. In the curve of their eyebrows, the slight tilt of their heads when they listened, the deep, intelligent pools of their eyes. It was Julian, unmistakable. A wave of profound emotion washed over her, a mixture of overwhelming love for these unexpected fragments of her son and a fierce, burning indignation. "How old are you?" Evelyn managed to ask, her voice hoarse, barely a whisper. 10, Grace replied, her gaze steady. "We'll be 11 in September." 10. Evelyn's mind, despite the emotional maelstrom, instantly calculated. Julian would have been 33 when they were born. 33, an age when he was well into his medical career, seemingly dedicated only to his work. How could this be? "Where do you live?" Evelyn asked, her tone instinctively gentle, not wanting to frighten them away. "With Aunt Eleanor," Grace explained. "She's at work today. We skipped school to come here." A faint blush colored her cheeks, betraying a child's guilt. Lily, the quietest of the three, stepped slightly forward, her lower lip trembling. "We wanted to visit Daddy," she whispered, her small voice breaking. "We didn't get to before he went to heaven." The raw innocence of their words, their simple, profound grief, pierced Evelyn's heart anew. Julian had been gone a week, and these children, his children, had only now managed to visit his grave. A fresh wave of emotions, hot and cold, surged through her. The unbearable sadness for their loss, the bewildering joy of discovering them, the sharp sting of confusion, and a deep, unsettling anger. Anger at Julian for his secrecy, and at whoever had kept these precious girls from her, from their rightful place in Julian's life, and now from hers. The realization that these three beautiful children were Julian's daughters brought with it an overwhelming surge of emotions for Evelyn. Confusion battled with an unexpected joy, and a burning question consumed her. Why had she never known? "Does your Aunt Eleanor know you're here?" Evelyn asked, her voice softer than she'd thought possible, her eyes still tracing Julian's features in their faces. Grace shook her head, her dark braids swaying slightly. "No, she said we shouldn't come anymore. She said it was too sad for us and that Daddy wouldn't want us to be sad." Lily, still trembling a little, added, "But we had to say goodbye. We didn't get to before he went to heaven." Her words were a stark reminder of Julian's sudden absence, a fresh stab of pain. Evelyn knelt, bringing herself closer to their level, her heart aching for their loss and for the years she had unknowingly missed. "Tell me about your daddy," she urged, needing to hear their stories, needing to piece together this hidden life of her son. The girls, initially hesitant, soon began to open up, their voices shy at first, then gaining confidence as they spoke of their beloved father. Julian, they revealed, had visited them every other weekend without fail. He had taught them all how to ride their bikes, patiently holding their seats, cheering them on. He made the best Sunday morning pancakes, thick and fluffy, with chocolate chips shaped into smiling faces. He would read them bedtime stories, his voice a comforting rumble, and always brought them small, thoughtful gifts. A new book, a colorful set of crayons, a little trinket he'd found on his travels. He was to them a hero, a source of unwavering love and comfort. Evelyn listened, a kaleidoscope of images flashing through her mind. Julian, the diligent doctor, the quiet son, the reserved man transformed into this playful, loving father. "Why didn't your daddy ever bring you to meet me?" she asked, the question laced with a mixture of hope and a profound sadness. Grace hesitated, her brow furrowing in thought. "He said you were still very sad about Grandpa Arthur dying," she explained, her young voice earnest, "and he didn't want to make you sadder." Evelyn frowned. Arthur, her beloved husband, had passed away 8 years ago. While her grief had been deep, it had softened over time. Julian's explanation felt thin. It didn't quite make sense. Then Rose, who had been quieter until now, added her own memory, her voice a soft murmur. "He said you were the best mommy in the world, and that someday when the time was right, we would meet you, and you would love us too." The words, so innocent and full of hope, broke something in Evelyn. Tears, hot and fast, streamed down her face, blurring the children's faces into shimmering images. "I would have loved you," she sobbed, reaching out a trembling hand to touch Grace's cheek. "I would have loved you so much." The regret for lost time, for lost moments, was immense, a gaping wound. Grace surprisingly reached up and gently wiped a tear from Evelyn's cheek. Her small hand was soft, comforting. "Daddy said," she began, her voice steady and wise beyond her years, "sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices to protect the people they love." Before Evelyn could process this cryptic message, a woman's voice, sharp with panic and anger, cut through the quiet cemetery air. "Grace, Rose, Lily, what are you doing here?" Evelyn looked up to see a woman in her early 50s, her face flushed, rushing towards them across the lawn. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and she wore practical, sensible clothes. This must be Aunt Eleanor. Eleanor reached them, her eyes blazing as she scanned the girls. "I told you not to come back here. Skipping school? Do you have any idea how worried I've been?" She then turned her furious gaze on Evelyn. "And who are you? What are you doing with my nieces?" Evelyn, still reeling from the girls' revelations, stood slowly. "I'm Evelyn Hayes," she stated, her voice regaining some of its usual matriarchal firmness. "I'm Julian's mother." Eleanor's face drained of all color, her anger replaced by a stark, almost fearful pallor. Her eyes darted from Evelyn to the girls, a desperate calculation playing out on her features. She immediately moved to shield the girls, pulling them protectively behind her. "You need to leave," Eleanor declared, her voice now sharp and defensive. "You have no rights here." Evelyn felt a surge of indignation. "No rights? I'm their grandmother," she protested, her voice rising. Eleanor cut her off, her jaw tight. "Julian made his choices for good reasons. You don't understand." She practically herded the girls away, her grip firm on their arms. "Come on, girls. We're leaving. Right now." As Eleanor rushed the girls towards an older, dented blue sedan parked on the winding cemetery road, Grace twisted her head, her eyes wide and pleading, looking back at Evelyn. "Will we see you again?" she called out, her voice filled with a child's hope and fear. Evelyn could only watch as they climbed into the car and drove away, leaving her standing alone by Julian's grave, with more questions than answers. Julian's secrets, his hard choices to protect the people they love. What did it all mean? And who was this Aunt Eleanor, so fiercely protective, so clearly threatened by Evelyn's presence? Evelyn knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that she could not let this go. She had found a piece of Julian she never knew existed, and she would move heaven and earth to uncover the truth and claim her grandchildren. The image of Grace's pleading eyes and the desperate question, "Will we see you again?" burned in Evelyn's memory. For 3 days, she felt a restless energy, a driving need to find them. She dismissed Mr. Henderson, opting to drive her own car, a sleek Mercedes sedan, through the quieter residential streets surrounding the cemetery, hoping to catch a glimpse of Aunt Eleanor's old blue sedan. She drove for hours, her eyes scanning every parked car, every small house, but the blue sedan remained elusive. The city seemed to swallow them whole, and Evelyn began to feel a familiar pang of helplessness. On Saturday morning, a new strategy formed in her mind. Julian had lived in the same apartment building for years, a tasteful complex downtown. Surely the building manager, Mr. Delgado, a discreet and observant man, might know something. Evelyn drove there, her heart thumping with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. She found Mr. Delgado in his small, tidy office, diligently working through paperwork. After a polite exchange, Evelyn explained her reason for visiting, choosing her words carefully. Mr. Delgado, I'm trying to understand a little more about Julian's life outside of his work. Did he ever have regular visitors? Mr. Delgado, a man of quiet demeanor, paused, his gaze thoughtful. Dr. Hayes was a very private man, Mrs. Hayes, he began cautiously. But yes, there were some regular visitors, every couple of weeks, usually on a Saturday or Sunday. 3 little girls, very polite, very quiet, and an older woman with them. He described the woman, tired-looking, dark hair pulled back, practical clothes. It was Eleanor, without a doubt. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, confirming her sightings. Armed with this small but significant validation, Evelyn returned to the cemetery that afternoon. She parked her Mercedes discreetly, further down the road from the main entrance, partially obscured by a thick line of evergreens. She brought a book, but her eyes rarely left the entrance, her heart a drumbeat of nervous anticipation. After 2 long hours, just as the sun began to dip, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the familiar old blue sedan rattled into view. Aunt Eleanor emerged, her face looking even more worn than Evelyn remembered, followed by Grace, Rose, and Lily. They walked towards Julian's grave, each carrying a small bunch of freshly picked wildflowers. Evelyn took a deep breath, steeling herself, and walked towards them. Eleanor spotted her first, her eyes widening with a mixture of alarm and resignation. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice tight. Evelyn held her gaze steadily. "The same thing you are, Eleanor. Visiting my son." Rose, seeing Evelyn, gave a small, shy smile. "We brought Daddy new wildflowers," she said softly, holding up her bouquet. "We picked them from the field near our house." "They're beautiful, sweethearts," Evelyn said, her voice softening, her eyes lingering on the girls before returning to Eleanor. "Eleanor, we need to talk. Properly." Eleanor looked utterly exhausted, her shoulders slumped. She glanced at the girls, then back at Evelyn. The fierce defensiveness she had shown earlier seemed to be warring with a deep weariness. She sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. "Not here," she said, her voice flat. "There's a diner on Maple Street. O'Malley's. Give us 10 minutes to get settled. And don't think anything has changed, Mrs. Hayes." Her tone was a clear warning. 20 minutes later, Evelyn found herself seated across from Eleanor in a worn vinyl booth at O'Malley's diner. The air hummed with the cheerful din of clinking cutlery and family chatter. Grace, Rose, and Lily were tucked into a booth a few tables away, happily sharing a plate of fries and sipping vibrant pink milkshakes, seemingly oblivious to the tension between the 2 adults. They looked relaxed, comfortable, a stark contrast to their solemn demeanor at the cemetery. "All right, Mrs. Hayes," Eleanor began, her gaze direct, though still guarded. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," Evelyn replied simply. "Everything about Julian, about the girls." Eleanor took a deep breath, her eyes clouding with a mixture of sadness and resentment. "Their mother was my sister, Clara. She died 4 years ago. I've been taking care of them ever since." Evelyn felt a pang of sympathy for Eleanor and a fresh wave of sorrow for Julian, who had clearly carried this burden alone. "Clara, did she have health problems?" Eleanor's expression tightened, a wall going up. "Some things are private, Mrs. Hayes. They don't concern you." Her tone was sharp, a clear boundary drawn. "But they are my grandchildren, Eleanor," Evelyn countered gently, refusing to be deterred. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice low and emphatic. "And you have no legal claim to them. Julian never married Clara. He loved them fiercely, I know that. He was a good father, always there for them. But there was no legal bond between him and Clara, or between you and them. I am their aunt, their closest living relative, and their legal guardian." The words hung in the air, blunt and undeniable. Evelyn absorbed them, her mind working quickly. Legalities could be navigated. The immediate priority was reassurance. "Eleanor," Evelyn said, her voice steady and sincere, "I'm not trying to take the girls from you. I can see you love them, and you've clearly done an extraordinary job. But Julian was my only son. These girls are all I have left of him. I just want to know them, to be a part of their lives, if you'll allow it. Eleanor's stern expression softened almost imperceptibly, a flicker of vulnerability in her tired eyes. The fight in her seemed to have temporarily drained away, replaced by the weight of her responsibilities. She looked at the girls, laughing over their milkshakes, then back at Evelyn. The silence stretched thick with unspoken history and future possibilities. The silence in the diner booth stretched, broken only by the cheerful sounds from the girls' table and the low hum of conversation around them. Eleanor's gaze, though still cautious, seemed to soften as she looked at Evelyn, perhaps recognizing a shared loneliness, a common thread of grief. Her shoulders, previously rigid with defiance, slumped slightly, betraying the immense burden she carried. Clara had a rare hereditary genetic condition, Eleanor finally revealed, her voice barely a whisper, the words heavy with pain. It affects the muscles, making them weak over time. It's progressive. Evelyn's stomach dropped, a cold dread seeping through her. The question formed on her lips before she could even consciously articulate it. Do the girls have it? Eleanor's eyes welled up with tears, glistening in the dim diner light. She nodded slowly, tragically. Two of them do, Rose and Lily. Grace seems to be clear. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, a testament to the silent suffering she endured. How bad is it? Evelyn whispered, her voice tight with a sudden, fierce protectiveness she hadn't known she possessed until this moment. Eleanor swallowed hard, her gaze flickering towards the girls before returning to Evelyn. It's manageable for now, but it requires expensive care, physical therapy, specialized equipment, regular medications, frequent visits to specialists. It's a lifelong condition. She paused, her voice tinged with a raw vulnerability. Julian was helping with the costs. He was so good about it, always making sure they had what they needed. But now it's just me. I work night shifts cleaning offices, trying to keep up. Evelyn's eyes drifted to the girls. She watched Grace carefully cut Rose's chicken fingers into small, manageable pieces. Then she saw Rose gently push a stray strand of Lily's hair from her face, and Lily lean against Rose, a subtle gesture of comfort and reliance. They had learned to care for each other, to navigate their world with an unspoken understanding. It broke Evelyn's heart, yet filled it with an immense admiration for their resilience and their bond. The puzzle pieces of Julian's secrecy began to click into place. Is this why Julian kept them secret? Evelyn asked, her voice hushed. Eleanor nodded, her eyes still red-rimmed. He said you'd already been through enough sadness with Arthur's passing. He didn't want you to have to worry about sick grandchildren. He thought it would break your heart. A flicker of anger, sharp and hot, initially flared within Evelyn. How dare Julian think her so fragile, so incapable of handling hardship? Did he truly believe she wouldn't embrace her own grandchildren, regardless of their health? But then she looked at Eleanor's worn face, at the subtle, protective movements of Grace towards her sisters, and the anger began to dissipate, replaced by a profound, sorrowful understanding. Julian hadn't just been protecting her from heartbreak. He had perhaps been shielding the girls from an adult who, in his mind, might not have been able to handle the reality of their condition. He had made those hard choices to protect the people he loved. Eleanor, Evelyn said, her voice firm, resolute. I want to help with everything. The medical the appointments, the specialists. I can provide the best care for them. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, a flicker of suspicion returning. What are you talking about? Money? Is that what this is? You think you can just buy your way into their lives? I'm talking about family, Evelyn insisted, leaning forward, her gaze unwavering. I'm talking about these girls having a grandmother who loves them, a grandmother who would do anything for them, just as Julian would have. At that moment, Grace, who must have been listening more intently than Evelyn realized, slid out of her booth. She walked slowly, hesitantly, toward their table, her identical sisters watching her with wide, expectant eyes. She stopped beside Evelyn, her small face serious. Are you really our grandmom? She asked, her voice soft. Then her eyes dropped to her sisters at the other table, a flicker of fear in their depths. And you want to know us, even though Rose and Lily are sick? Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. The child's raw honesty, her innocent fear of rejection, was a dagger to her heart. She reached out, gently taking Grace's hand, especially because they're sick, Grace, Evelyn said, her voice thick with emotion. That's what families do. We take care of each other, no matter what. Grace looked at Evelyn, her eyes searching, then a slow, small smile touched her lips. She nodded, a profound understanding passing between them. I think Daddy would like that, she whispered. Eleanor, watching the exchange, finally broke. Tears began to stream freely down her face. Tears of relief, of exhaustion, of hope. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. When she looked up again, her eyes were still wet, but her voice held a newfound resolve. This is a lifelong commitment, Mrs. Hayes, she warned, her voice hoarse. There will be medical appointments, insurance battles, watching children deal with a lifelong condition. It's not easy, and you can't walk away. Evelyn met her gaze, her own eyes steady and unyielding. I won't walk away, Eleanor. These are my granddaughters, Julian's daughters. Nothing about their condition changes that. They are my family now. Eleanor searched Evelyn's eyes for a long moment, as if trying to gauge the depth of her sincerity. Finally, she exhaled, a deep, shuddering breath. Okay, she said, her voice softer, almost yielding. Okay, we can try, but we do this my way at my pace. And the girls' needs come first. Always. The following Saturday, Evelyn found herself pulling up to Eleanor's small, neat bungalow, her heart thrumming with a mix of nerves and burgeoning excitement. The house, though modest, was spotlessly clean, its small front garden meticulously tended. Eleanor met her at the door, her expression still a mixture of caution and weary welcome. She ushered Evelyn inside into a living room filled with worn but comfortable furniture and the telltale signs of children, colorful drawings taped to the fridge, a pile of well-loved storybooks on a low shelf. Grace was the first to appear, her dark eyes bright with curiosity. She was quickly followed by Rose and Lily, who emerged shyly from behind their aunt, their gazes hesitant. Grandma Evelyn, Grace exclaimed, the words a melody that instantly melted Evelyn's carefully constructed composure. Rose and Lily echoed the sentiment, their voices softer but no less genuine. Hello, my dears, Evelyn said, her voice trembling slightly as she knelt to embrace them, pulling them into a gentle hug. It felt impossibly right, like a missing piece of her life had finally clicked into place. Lily, her shyness momentarily forgotten, proudly presented a plate of lopsided, but clearly homemade chocolate chip cookies. We made them, with Aunt Eleanor, she announced, her face beaming. Evelyn accepted one, a warm sense of belonging settling over her. They settled into the living room, Evelyn on a floral armchair, the girls perched on the edge of the sofa. Grace, ever the initiator, brought over a construction paper family book. It was a simple, heartfelt creation, filled with crayon drawings and cut-out photos. Evelyn carefully turned the pages, seeing Julian's smiling face in numerous pictures with the girls, a joyful, engaged father she had never known. There were drawings of Clara, their mother, who seemed to disappear from the narrative after a certain point, leaving Julian, the girls, and Aunt Eleanor to form the new family unit. Daddy said you lived far away, Lily remarked softly, pointing to a drawing of a distant grand house. But that someday we might meet you. Evelyn's heart ached. She gently corrected them. I just didn't know about you, sweethearts, but I wish I had. Oh, how I wish I had. Grace, always direct, looked at Evelyn, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Aunt Eleanor said you're really rich. Is that true? Evelyn managed a small smile. Yes, Grace, it is true. But being rich isn't just about having money. It means you have different responsibilities. She paused, choosing her words carefully. It means that if you have more than you need, you should help people who don't have enough, like how you three take care of each other. She gestured to the subtle ways they supported each other. Grace's vigilance, Rose's comforting touch for Lily. The girls looked at each other, then back at Evelyn, a glimmer of understanding in their eyes. They spent the afternoon poring over old photo albums from Eleanor's collection, filled with snapshots of Julian with the girls. Evelyn saw Julian laughing as he taught them to garden, his hands covered in dirt, Julian making silly faces at the zoo, Julian patiently helping them with their homework. These were sides of her son she had never witnessed, a full, vibrant life he had carefully compartmentalized. As the afternoon wore on, Evelyn observed Rose and Lily more closely. Their movements were indeed less coordinated than Grace's, their fatigue more apparent. Grace, true to form, was a quiet, constant presence, always ready with a helping hand, a shared toy, or a gentle nudge to keep her sisters comfortable. At one point, Lily, worn out from the excitement, simply curled up in Evelyn's lap and fell fast asleep, her breathing soft and even. Evelyn held her close, a profound sense of protectiveness washing over her. When it was time for Lily to go to bed, Evelyn carried her, noticing how light the child felt in her arms. Later, as the sun began to set, Grace and Rose approached Evelyn, their eyes gleaming with a special request. "Can we show Grandma Evelyn some videos Daddy made?" Grace asked Eleanor. Eleanor, after a moment's hesitation, retrieved an old tablet from a drawer. She handed it to Grace, who expertly navigated to a folder. Suddenly, Julian's face filled the screen, younger, vibrant, full of life. He was telling an elaborate fairy tale, complete with funny voices and exaggerated gestures, to "My beautiful girls." He ended the video with a tender smile, his gaze sweeping over the unseen children. "Remember, you three are the most important things in my whole world. I love you more than all the stars in the sky." Evelyn couldn't hold back her tears. They streamed freely, openly, a torrent of grief for the son she had lost and the extraordinary father she had just discovered. Eleanor, watching Evelyn weep, sat beside her, and for the first time her guarded expression softened completely. She placed a hesitant hand on Evelyn's arm. "This is hard for me too, Evelyn," she admitted, her voice raw. "The idea of sharing them, it scares me. They're all I have left of Clara, too." Evelyn, still choked with emotion, reiterated her desire to help, her voice firm despite her tears. "I want to help, Eleanor, especially with Rose and Lily's medical appointments. I want to make sure they get the very best care." Grace, who had been quietly watching the two women, spoke up, her voice surprisingly mature. "Maybe it would be good to have help, Aunt Eleanor. You've been really tired lately." Eleanor looked at Grace, then back at Evelyn, a silent battle playing out on her face. Evelyn pressed gently. "Let's start small. Let me help with the next round of appointments. We can go together." After a long pause, Eleanor nodded, a glimmer of relief in her eyes. "Okay," she conceded. "We can try that." As Evelyn prepared to leave, all three girls rushed forward, enveloping her in a group hug. Grace, ever the thoughtful one, slipped a small, folded piece of paper into Evelyn's hand. "It's my phone number," she whispered, her eyes shining, "in case you want to call us." Evelyn clutched the paper, a precious, tangible link to her newfound family, feeling a profound sense of purpose she hadn't known since Julian's death. 3 weeks into their tentative new routine, Evelyn had fully immersed herself in the girls' lives. She accompanied them to physical therapy sessions, watching intently as Rose and Lily struggled with exercises that Grace performed effortlessly. She learned the specialized terms, researched the rare genetic condition, which Eleanor simply referred to as muscular dystrophy, devouring every scientific paper she could find. Her days, once quiet and filled with a somber solitude, were now vibrant, bustling with appointments, school pickups, and the delightful chaos of 3 energetic 10-year-olds. During a routine checkup with Dr. Miller, the girls' pediatric specialist, the atmosphere in the sterile examination room shifted dramatically. Dr. Miller, a kind-faced woman with a gentle demeanor, sat them down after reviewing the latest genetic testing results. Her expression was grave. "Eleanor, Evelyn," she began, her voice soft but firm, "the genetic testing has revealed that Rose and Lily's condition is more aggressive than we initially thought." Evelyn's stomach clenched. "Without significant intervention," Dr. Miller continued, "both girls are facing significant mobility issues, likely requiring wheelchairs within the next 5 years, and unfortunately a significantly shortened life expectancy." A cold wave of dread washed over Evelyn. 5 years, wheelchairs, shortened life. She looked at Rose and Lily, who were quietly coloring in a corner, blissfully unaware of the catastrophic pronouncements. Grace, however, had stopped drawing, her head tilted, her sharp eyes fixed on Dr. Miller. "Is there an intervention?" Evelyn asked, her voice barely a whisper, a desperate plea. Dr. Miller nodded. "There's an experimental treatment program at Johns Hopkins. It's groundbreaking, showing remarkable promise in slowing, even halting the progression in some cases. She described the program, intensive, lasting several months, requiring relocation, and while most medical costs were covered, living expenses and continuous care were not. Eleanor, her face pale, whispered, I can't. I don't have the resources for that kind of... Her voice trailed off, the weight of her financial struggles crushing her. Evelyn's gaze went from the unaware girls to Grace's intently listening face, then back to Dr. Miller. She had to ask the dreadful question, the one that tore at her heart. What happens if they don't get this treatment? Dr. Miller's eyes held profound sympathy. The progression will be severe, Evelyn. It's a cruel disease. And with treatment, Evelyn pressed, a fierce determination hardening her resolve. With treatment, Dr. Miller said, a flicker of hope in her voice. There is significant hope for marked improvement, for halting the progression, and potentially decades of additional mobility and quality of life. Grace, her small face serious, spoke up. Are you talking about the Hope and Joy program? Dr. Miller nodded, surprised the child knew the name of the highly specialized program. Would they have to go away? Grace asked, her voice trembling with fear. For a while, yes, Dr. Miller confirmed, but not alone. They would need a guardian with them constantly. Grace's response was brutal in its honesty, reflecting a child's understanding of their family's limitations. Aunt Eleanor can't leave work for that long, and we can't afford it anyway. I heard you on the phone with the insurance company last week, Aunt Eleanor. Rose, now attuned to the gravity of the conversation, looked up from her coloring book, her large eyes filled with apprehension. Are Rose and Lily going to get sicker? She asked, her voice small and fragile. Before Eleanor could respond, Evelyn stepped in, her voice ringing with an unwavering conviction. No, she declared, looking directly at Rose, then at Eleanor, then at Grace. Not if I have anything to say about it. We will do this treatment. Eleanor stared at Evelyn, her jaw slack. Evelyn, you don't understand the immense commitment involved. It's months away from home, constant appointments, round-the-clock care. It's not a small undertaking. Evelyn met Eleanor's bewildered gaze with a fierce resolve. Then come with us, she countered, her plan already forming in her mind. All of us. We'll rent a place near the hospital. I'll hire the best home care nurses, tutors, whatever is needed. We'll make it work. Eleanor was stunned into silence. Grace looked at her aunt, then at Evelyn, a flicker of hope and doubt warring in her young eyes. Lily, seeing the seriousness of the discussion, chimed in, her voice surprisingly thoughtful. Maybe Grandma Evelyn is right. Maybe it would be better if we all helped each other. Grace, always the pragmatic one, added, what's best for us is being together. All of us together. Eleanor looked from the determined Evelyn to her nieces, who, despite their fears, were clinging to the glimmer of hope Evelyn offered. The weight of her responsibility, the love for her nieces, and the sheer exhaustion of her struggle warred with her pride and independence. She knew Evelyn was offering a lifeline, a chance for Rose and Lily, a chance she could never provide alone. The silence stretched, pregnant with the decision that would alter all their lives. Evelyn waited, her heart pounding, her resolve unshaken. Clara Miller, seeing Evelyn's unwavering determination and Eleanor's hesitant hope, quickly explained the application timeline for the Johns Hopkins program. We have 2 weeks to submit a comprehensive application, she stated. And then, if accepted, enrollment would begin in about 8 weeks. The tight schedule underscored the urgency of their decision. Evelyn turned to Eleanor, whose face was still a mosaic of fear and longing. What do you need, Eleanor, to make this decision? What do I need to understand? Eleanor's eyes welled up again, but this time her voice was clearer, filled with a raw, honest pain. I need to know you truly understand the commitment, Evelyn, not just the money. This is about caring for 2 sick children through painful procedures, through setbacks and disappointments. It's about supporting Grace, who isn't sick, but will watch her sister struggle. It's about staying strong when you feel like breaking. Her words painted a stark, unflinching picture of the reality they faced. Evelyn knelt, bringing herself to the girls' level, taking their small hands in hers. Girls, she began, her voice steady despite the emotion churning within her. If we do this, it's going to be hard sometimes. There will be days that are sad and days that are tiring, but we'll face it together as a family. Grace looked at her, her intelligent eyes searching Evelyn's face. Will we all stay together? All of us? Every single day, Evelyn promised, squeezing her hand. And Eleanor, Grace, Rose, Lily, and me. We'll be together. Rose, her voice small and wavering, asked, even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard, Evelyn affirmed, her gaze sweeping over all three of them. Lily, who had been unusually quiet, watching with wide, serious eyes, suddenly launched herself into Evelyn's arms, hugging her tightly. I don't want to get sicker, Grandma Evelyn, she whispered, her voice muffled against Evelyn's shoulder. Evelyn hugged her back, her own heart aching. You're not going to get sicker, my sweet Lily, she said, her voice firm with a promise she intended to keep. We're going to fight this thing, together. Later that evening, back at Eleanor's small kitchen table, after the girls were tucked into bed, Eleanor finally revealed the deepest, most painful truth, a secret that Julian had carried alone. The conversation had drifted back to Clara and the circumstances of her death. Eleanor's face was etched with a profound sorrow. Clara didn't just die from the genetic condition, Evelyn, Eleanor began, her voice barely audible. She took her own life. Evelyn gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. The shock was profound, a gut-wrenching blow. She stared at Eleanor, speechless. Eleanor's eyes were filled with unshed tears. She couldn't handle it. Watching the girls start to show symptoms, seeing the progression of the disease in herself, she became terrified of their future, terrified of her own. The depression just consumed her. She felt hopeless. Evelyn listened, her mind racing, connecting the dots. The girls believed Clara had died from complications of her illness, a gentle lie Julian and Eleanor had maintained to protect them. Julian, Eleanor explained, had been utterly devastated. He blamed himself, convinced he should have seen Clara's spiraling depression, should have done more. And then, with a horrifying clarity, Evelyn understood Julian's secrecy, his hard choices to protect the people he loved. That's why he didn't tell me about them, Evelyn whispered, the pieces finally falling into place. He was afraid I wouldn't be able to handle it either. He thought I'd already been through enough sadness. Eleanor nodded, confirming Evelyn's painful realization. He just wanted to protect you. He loved you so much, Evelyn. He thought you'd lost enough already. A fresh wave of grief, mixed with a deep, sorrowful indignation, washed over Evelyn. He was wrong about me, she declared, her voice firm. So wrong. I would have helped. I would have been there for all of them. For Clara, for him, for these precious girls. The anger at Julian, once vague, now had a painful, clear source. He had underestimated her strength, her capacity for love, her ability to face hardship. I want to do this treatment, Eleanor, Evelyn continued, her gaze unwavering. Not out of guilt or because Julian wanted to protect me, but because these girls, Rose and Lily, Grace, they deserve every single chance we can give them. Every chance, but no, I'm feeling. Eleanor looked at Evelyn, a flicker of something akin to awe in her tired eyes. Evelyn, she said softly, your life will change completely. You're a wealthy widow, used to a certain lifestyle. This will be demanding. You'll go from being Evelyn Hayes, a woman of leisure, to a full-time caregiver for 3 children, 2 with serious, ongoing medical needs. Evelyn met her gaze, her own eyes alight with a fierce conviction. My life changed the moment I saw them at Julian's grave, Eleanor. Everything since then has just been figuring out how to make it work, how to be the grandmother they deserve. A slow smile spread across Eleanor's face, a genuine smile that reached her eyes for the first time Evelyn had seen. She extended her hand across the table, a gesture of alliance. Okay, she said, her voice filled with a newfound lightness. Okay, let's do it. Let's give those girls the best shot we can. Evelyn clasped Eleanor's hand firmly, a silent pact sealed between them. As Evelyn drove home that night, the city lights blurring past, she felt a profound sense of purpose. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but she would keep her promise. She would fight for Rose and Lily's future, for Grace's well-being, for the memory of Julian, and for the chance to be the grandmother they all deserved, whatever the cost. The morning after their pact, Evelyn moved with a renewed sense of purpose. Her first call was to Dr. Miller, confirming their intent to submit the application for Rose and Lily to the Johns Hopkins program. Her second was to her financial advisor, instructing him to make significant changes to her spending priorities. The millions that had once felt meaningless now had a profound, vital purpose. The hollow silence in her life had been replaced by a surging tide of resolve. 18 months later, Evelyn stood in the spacious, sunlit kitchen of their rented Baltimore home. The air hummed with familiar, cherished sounds. Grace's gentle encouragement as she helped Lily with her physical therapy exercises on a mat in the living room, and the delicate, slightly hesitant notes of Rose practicing piano in the den. The house, once an empty shell, now resonated with children's laughter, music, and the constant, comforting bustle of a full family. The treatment program had been every bit as intensive and heartbreaking, Eleanor had warned. There were days of sickness, exhaustion, tears, and overwhelming frustration. Yet, woven through the hardship were moments of breathtaking improvement. Rose's muscle strength had noticeably increased, allowing her to move with more ease and less pain. Lily, who had defeated some of the most pessimistic predictions, was walking farther each day, her small steps filled with a quiet triumph. Each milestone, however small, was celebrated with whoops and cheers, laughter filling the temporary home. "Grandma Evelyn," Lily called out, her voice clear and bright, "can we have our 11th birthday party here? At our Baltimore house?" Evelyn smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. "Of course, sweetheart," she replied, the identity of Grandma now fitting her as naturally as her own skin. "It's your home, too." Just then Eleanor walked in, her face tired but alight with a quiet satisfaction. Through Dr. Miller's help, she had found a fulfilling role at the hospital's patient advocacy office, a job that utilized her compassion and deep understanding of the healthcare system. Grace immediately launched into a proud report of the day's achievements. Lily's new walking record, Rose's mastery of a particularly tricky piano piece. Rose's condition had stabilized beautifully, and Lily, against all odds, continued to improve. The girls had also discovered new talents. Rose, a natural pianist, now dreamed of conservatory. Lily, with her vivid imagination, was blossoming into a gifted storyteller. And Grace, with her sharp intellect and compassionate nature, thrived on the debate team at her new school. Dr. Miller, impressed by their extraordinary progress and resilience, had approached them recently. She wanted to include Rose and Lily in a case study, their journey offering invaluable insight to help other children facing similar diagnoses. The girls, especially Grace, had needed no convincing. "If it helps other kids, Grandma Evelyn," Grace had stated, her eyes earnest, "we should do it." That evening, as the last rays of sunset painted the porch in shades of orange and pink, Eleanor and Evelyn sat together. "The lease on the old house is ending soon," Eleanor began, her voice tinged with a familiar weariness, yet also a new lightness. "We need to decide. Do we go back, or do we make Baltimore permanent?" Eleanor listed the girls' undeniable happiness, their new friends, Rose's piano conservatory auditions, Lily's creative writing workshops, Grace's burgeoning success on the debate team. But Evelyn knew the question that truly mattered. "What do you want, Eleanor?" she asked softly, placing a hand over Eleanor's. Eleanor's eyes welled up, and she squeezed Evelyn's hand tightly. "I want to not be afraid anymore," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "For the first time since Clara died, I feel like maybe I'm not carrying this alone." "You're not carrying it alone," Evelyn assured her, her voice firm. "You're my family now, Eleanor. Whatever happens, we face it together." Eleanor simply nodded, her hand clasping Evelyn's, a silent acceptance of their new, shared reality. The next morning at breakfast, with pancakes sizzling on the griddle, Evelyn put the question of permanent relocation to the girls. Rose, ever thoughtful, asked, "Grandma Evelyn, do you miss your old life, your big house?" Evelyn paused, a wistful smile touching her lips. "I miss your daddy, sweethearts," she admitted, her gaze tender. "Every single day, but I don't miss being alone." Lily, her small voice soft, asked, "Before you found us, were you lonely?" Evelyn met her gaze, her heart aching with the honesty of her answer. "Yes, sweetheart, very, very lonely." Then her smile broadened as she looked around at the lively table, the piles of pancakes, the spilled milk, the cheerful chatter. She described her new life, The excitement of a new diagnosis, the challenge of physical therapy, the joy of piano recitals and storytelling, the endless cycle of homework, laughter, and sometimes tears. It's a life filled with people who need me, Evelyn concluded, her voice full of contentment. And people I need, just as much. Grace, with her innate wisdom, summed it up perfectly. So, she said, looking from Evelyn to Eleanor, then at her sisters, we make each other less lonely. Everyone around the table agreed they would stay. Soon after, Evelyn and Eleanor found a larger house, a beautiful colonial with 5 bedrooms, a spacious office for Eleanor's advocacy work, a dedicated music room for Rose, and a sprawling backyard perfect for Lily's storytelling adventures. It was within walking distance of the hospital, a subtle reminder of the ongoing journey they had embraced. 6 months later, Evelyn stood in the heart of their new home, her gaze sweeping across the rooms. The walls were adorned with the girls' colorful art. Eleanor's study was a sanctuary of books and advocacy papers. And Evelyn's library, filled with her late husband's beloved classics, now held new, cherished editions, children's stories and medical journals on muscular dystrophy. On her nightstand, a framed photo, a gift from Eleanor, showed Julian, vibrant and laughing, surrounded by his 3 adoring daughters. Evelyn looked at it, and for the first time truly understood Julian's protective love, not as a judgment of her fragility, but as a desperate attempt to shield those he loved from pain he felt was inescapable. That evening at dinner, as they playfully argued about the merits of pineapple on pizza, Evelyn felt a complete and utter contentment settle over her. Lily, ever observant, noticed Evelyn's happy, funny smile. "What are you thinking, Grandma Evelyn?" she asked. Evelyn reached across the table, taking each of their hands. "I was just thinking," she replied, her voice filled with profound love, "about how much I love our family. All of us." Julian had been wrong about her fragility, Evelyn reflected. Loving these children with all their challenges, with all the heartache and the monumental effort required, had not broken her. Instead, it had brought her immeasurable joy, a renewed purpose, and a family more cherished than she could have ever imagined. Love, in its most unexpected and profound form, had found them, transforming her from a grieving, lonely woman into a grandmother with a cherished family and a future to look forward to, filled with warmth, laughter, and unwavering connection.